Right, good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're the brave ones, the courageous ones who got out of bed after a long day yesterday. This venue makes you walk quite a bit. Those tired legs and possibly exhausted minds found the energy, hopefully, some breakfast in the morning. And here we are. And welcome to this session. Lucian's going to Actually, Lucian was supposed to start. I forgot. Oh my God! Yeah, this is a natural instinct to pick up the mic wherever I see it. I always feel it's for me, but so this session, and we're very glad that there are some school delegates here because you could use this session to share with university colleagues how they could be taking a counseling-based approach with your students. And I think for our university colleagues, this session is very, very relevant around how you would engage with schools. So we have a rock star panel here in Lucian, who's a champion counselor, who's one of the most accomplished people you can get from the school side. And then we have Rob, who has a career in university enrollment management and admissions and outreach across many great institutions and currently serving at St. Louis University. So we'll get a case study from a university for our university colleagues on what's happening. And I don't belong anywhere. So I sit in the middle, neither in the school system nor in the university system. I don't really know what I'm doing on this panel, but I will be sandwiched between the two and say something that hopefully makes sense. So over to you, Lucian.
Great. Good morning, everybody. See some familiar faces in the audience and just kind of want to get a feel for the room before we get started. This is going to be an open session. I hope it's a lot of discussion and we can throw around some ideas. We're going to go through kind of 3 different sections. They're going to give us a lot of opportunity to think about what this idea even means to begin with, because I think it's a really broad idea. Just curious, how many school-based folks are in the audience, if you're in a school-based? And in a higher educated, yeah. Anybody else? Kind of a third-party type role? No. And then where are universities based? Do we have some based in India? No? School based in India? Yeah. Asia? Europe? I know we've got some European delegates in here. North America? Okay, cool. So we've got a really nice selection of people. And I know that there are different types of roles based on the university. And so, let's see if this is going to work. Okay, so we've got a couple different roles based in the university, but when I started talking to the IC3 team about what this might mean to do the session, I wasn't even sure myself. So what does it mean to be counseling based? So counseling based approaches to the work that you all do in a university setting. I have some thoughts about that. I think my co-panelists have some thoughts about that, but I set out some goals for us, either to learn, consider, or achieve. And in that, I think it means that we have a discussion. I think that's one of the first primary points I want to bring to this from the counseling perspective, is it's really open. Everybody in this audience has a way to interpret this and to bring this forward. And I think it's about disposition and philosophy and approach rather than any particular single thing that you can do. So here are the thoughts to begin with. I want to talk about process and not transaction. I think that's a really fundamental part of counseling. And I want to put that into this framework of thinking about counseling from this kind of deeper philosophical perspective of approach. We'll get into that in a second. Process is really important. And so we're going to have a discussion here in a moment about what transaction might be versus that process. So I hope that we can get some good responses going from the audience. We'll look at a particular type of theory or philosophy of counseling, but I really want to put this into this idea of we all need to have our own framework to bring into our interactions with a school or a student. So we'll talk about that briefly in my part of this. And then I want to get into kind of a case study. How do we actually put that into action in the interactions that we have with students or families, and then leave the first part of this session with some intentions for the rest of the session and what we can take away from this. So let's get into that a little bit and see where it goes. Okay, so process versus transaction, and then we'll talk about this philosophy. So if we think about this from this mapping backwards perspective at the university level, let's just start with some of the endpoints that you think are important to you. So we're going to think about this, yes, from this counseling perspective, but where you sit right now in your roles, what is the endpoint that you're trying to achieve? Can I get some thoughts out here? You know, what's success in the terms of the roles that you're bringing into your, or the outcomes that you're trying to bring to your role?
I can think of resilience in students.
So
Building resilience.
building resilience is a school-based role. Resilience in students, really kind of abstract thought, really important. Yeah, great. What else from the university perspective? What's a successful outcome for you? More students, more diverse. Okay, great. Yeah. Happy students. Okay, happy students.
Also giving them a clarity on what they want. The students at times are confused a little. So what destination, what course, they might have a lot of ideas. Funnel it down for them.
To funnel it down. Okay, yeah, more thoughts from the audience?
Making students understand their potential and then making them reach to that university or college,
Okay.
depending on their potential.
So from the school-based perspective, starting with a self-understanding of potential and then seeing where that takes them. More thoughts from the audience? Yeah?
Hand-holding at every step.
Was that hand-holding at every step? Okay, I'm wondering what hand-holding means.
To provide them a clear path guide, like where do they actually want to go? What do they want to do and where do they want to go?
Okay, great. Hand-holding. More thoughts from the audience? If I can go back to our gentleman here who talked about funneling it down. Do you think it's important that it funnels to your particular institution or a particular choice at your institution, or are you thinking about that in a broader sense?
Both, to be honest, because when we talk about funneling down, so, I mean, from a university perspective, and people that okay, is UK the best choice? Is America or Australia, whatever you want to go for?
Okay.
That ways.
Great. Yeah, I love when universities come into our schools. I think this is one of the clear takeaways from our, perspective from the school base. Is we love when universities come in and get to that funneling down sense where, if a student's sitting in there, and sorry, which country are you based with?
UK.
So you're UK. So if you talk about the UK in general, your institution in general, and a student sits into your presentation and says the UK is not for me, we think that's a really good outcome. I just wonder if you feel that's a good outcome.
Not really, because UK is always one of the choices, but then yes,
Okay.
I see more inclination towards the US for undergrads and then Australia to other.
Okay, great. We have the answer of a happy student. What do you think that means in the longer term sense of it?
A student who I represent in Italian university, so it's not
Yeah, I love that thought. Happy student, again, kind of focused on, is it happy in a particular context, or could it be also in that same sense, if that student realizes they wouldn't be happy in that Italian context? Yeah.
when I started, I was like, it was the best choice for this and for that. And now I'm like, expectation management here. You really want to know what it means to live and study.
Yeah.
If you decide that's not for you, you'll be happy and we'll be happy as well.
Okay, expectation management, really important in this. And how do we bring that to the students and the families probably, and the counselors and schools that we work with when, if we think about that thought of hand-holding or the process that we go through building resilience, how do we start to team up with this in a counseling perspective? I want to get into that a little bit more. So these are some great thoughts that we begin with here. If we start going a couple steps backwards from that, we want happy students. We want them to be making decisions that have funneled down. We know that counselors are working with them. I think that we all can empathize with our university colleagues because sometimes you only have that 30 seconds at a big fair. If a school really does well for you, they might be putting you into a situation where you have 5 kids show up in a setting for 45 minutes or an hour to have these discussions that go in roundtable. And maybe every once in a while you have those really meaningful opportunities to have a long discussion with the family, probably after you've gotten to know them or on a return visit. So if we're going all the way back to the beginning of this, and I'd actually like to hear this from the university perspective, where do you start with this? If it's about funneling it down, if it's about happy students, and you've only got these particular types of moments to interact and start this process off, just from the university perspective, where does this begin? What's the best first thing you can do to take this kind of approach?
I always ask, where do you imagine yourself?
Where do you imagine yourself?
Because if they haven't imagined it, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, love that question. I want to get into questions like that in a little while. Where do you imagine yourself? An open question. Beautiful. Yeah.
For me, what I've seen is students come and ask, what is it that your university offers? Why should I choose your university? And the counter question I put is, what do you want in the university? What are you envisioning? Where are you envisioning yourself? Are you envisioning a big campus, happy people, kind of that? And that's how it starts the communication there. So,
Yeah, wonderful. More thoughts from the audience? Any other starting points? How do you get this kicked off with the students or families? No? So when I hear a question like this, where do you imagine yourself? To me, that's a process question. That gets us started on this really open road to, it could go anywhere. They could start to tell you these answers to what they imagine, and it has nothing to do with your institution. Do you just walk away from them at that point? What do you do from there? How do you start to build back towards that end product of, is it a happy student? Is it funneling them to your institution, or is it helping them get anywhere they want to go? I think that's a really important part of this is, we're only kind of we're doing a really quick run through this idea, but that to me is process. It's not being worried about that final transaction of, I'm trying to get them into this course at my university. And of course, what we've found in EIM, we have been doing data and research on our alumni outcomes from the last 10, 12 years. And we found, of course, that this idea of, how satisfied a student is with their university experience has a big impact on where they go on and what kind of lives they live and how they reflect back on their education. If they're going into your institution from this transactional point of view of, I've kind of convinced them to get there, they're not as likely to succeed there anyway. So I think the students who maybe get funneled out, or the students who realize they wouldn't be happy, it's good. They wouldn't have been the right students for you anyway. I think that's our perspective, and I think we're all on the same page about that in a team sense. So when we talk about process, I'm putting this out there in sort of like a sort of a hyperbolic way, but it's about, as I said, Freud earlier. To me, counseling is rooted. It is not just to me. It is rooted in counseling theory, psychology theory. When I did my degree in counseling, we're starting right at that point. This is tradition coming out of Freud. The most important thing I realized as a counseling student was that you just need to pick a theory, but you don't need to use a theory. So if it's about this sort of sense of where do you imagine yourself going, and you want to do this through the stories that a student might tell, that's great. It doesn't mean that you have to have this really sort of complicated approach to it all. But what theories are you bringing into this if it's not going to be transactional? How do you start to think about the types of interactions you have with a student to find out if they're going to be happy? I think that's something that we can all do better between ourselves and universities and schools, is like, how do we want to deal with these families and students in this process? I think counselors would really appreciate that, having these sort of open discussions of what's our philosophical approach. You'll hear a counselor say, we were kind of a hand-holding type school. Well, what does that mean for us to come in and have the right types of interactions with students and families that'll fit with what they're used to? I think that could lead to really great outcomes in that university recruitment process. And the other thought I wanted to focus on here is this idea, for me, of counseling theory being about nobody's the expert usually in a counseling situation other than the client. So when I say client, from those deep psychological dives, if anybody's worked with a counselor or been to a psychologist, the psychologist is not really supposed to be the expert in the room. A counselor is not really the expert. The client's the expert. They know what's best for them. Our job is to help them figure out and give them the strength, the building resilience, so that they can make those choices from their self-expertise. That's the kind of philosophy that I'd love to see us all working more towards. It's getting away from transaction and into how do we empower students to make them feel like they're the experts in the room in this setting. If they sit down with me and are trying to tell me that they want to go to US or UK or Canada, they know better that answer than I do. If they're talking to you, you have the knowledge about your degrees and course, and you can give that to them objectively. If you're trying to move to this happiness of the student, they're the ones who should be in control that final destiny. And I think the way that we approach them is really important. So the next thought that I want to come to is that in a counseling-based approach to this, to me, it's more about skill than knowledge. That's what we want to tell all of our counselors. So we have about 45 counselors in our group. And our starting point, every interview that I'm in with a counselor, I always ask this question. I ask, what's the difference in your practice between skill and knowledge-based counseling? To me, knowledge-based counseling is the easiest type of counseling. I know the difference between the UCAS and Common App, and I know that this is what you have to do, steps 1, 2, 3 to apply to Oxford or whatever it is. Go do it. I'm going to kind of push you through that process. And skill-based counseling is, how do I ask the right question? That perfect kind of question, open question versus closed question. That to me is skill-based counseling. That's what leads us into these types of happy student outcomes in the end, because they get more control of those choices. Okay, so I want to go into a little bit of a case study. We're trying to cruise through this so I can give my other panelists a chance to kind of make some connections here. Imaginary University, and we're going to call it Felix University. It has some serious needs, right? I think we know what the climate is around the world. There's a lot of competition in international recruitment. Felix University both values and needs increased international student enrollment. So they do value it. It's important to them. The culture, what they're selling to their domestic and international enrollments is about this diversity. But there's also some financial need there, right? Those international student enrollments are important. So that's the starting point. There are business degrees, this is just context. There are business degrees, but no fine art degrees. You could probably predict where this kind of case study might go. And KPIs, for those of you in the recruitment sense or the admission sense, are around recruitment and enrollment. If you're trying to funnel down, you want that recruitment enrollment. It's good, this is what you're trying to achieve. But then are we going to find a happy student, and is it worth it if they come in and you get your number? So we're trying to think in this way. You've had a discussion with the parents. So maybe it's a fair, they've invited in the whole community, the parents have come in. The parents are totally into Felix University. They're really, we've had our hearts set on this university for our daughter forever. We love the business program there. This is what's happening. This is what we're willing to pay for. You get to meet the daughter separately, and maybe there's a clue here. But let's use process and skill and not transaction. What are some of the ideas in the room for what's the first type of counseling type question you could ask the daughter? How do you get this started? Are you interested in this? Which program?
You were mentioning business or whatever, because usually when I speak with parents, I'm a lawyer and my daughter is studying law, but they are not interested in law because they want to do like math, for example,
Okay.
or medicine. So.
Okay. Are you interested in the business program at my university? Okay. More thoughts from the audience? What are you interested in?
I would say that how are you doing? I give you the day.
Yeah, how are you doing? That's a really good start. Yeah.
I would ask, what's your favorite subject? What do you like studying at high school?
What do you like
And
studying
then,
in high
if
school?
they say, oh, I hate maths, okay, then I would
Yeah.
know that economics, for example, is not for them.
For me, it would be if the daughter says that yes, I want to study business in Felix University, in Felix University, then the next question would be, okay, what do you know about business, and what is it that interests you more in business? Because it's not necessarily that student would be very good with accounts or finance, but they still want to do business, so they can go for marketing and management. So that's funneling it down again.
All right, let's take one more. Yeah.
Would you like to study in Milan? I'm representing an Italian university as well. So do you like Milan? Do you like the city? Do you like Italy? Because the location and destination is also important in terms of choice of the university.
Yeah.
So
Great. I'm just trying to make a quick point here on this, and these are all, there's nothing wrong with any of the answers that are coming out here. But I think philosophically, in the open versus closed question sense, the more open you are, the better it is at the starting point. And I'm going to pick on you a little bit here. But if you say, are you interested in business degrees? That is potentially setting up all of this background. Remember, we're separate from the parents here. it becomes so much harder for that student to say no if they've been having this conversation. You know, as soon as you throw that word business out there, you throw that, all those expectations that may have been set by the parents. We don't know, right? So the kind of like, what do you imagine yourself doing question is so open as a starting point that they have the chance to say anything they want to say, right? That gives them the best chance. Anything that sort of creates a closed loop in terms of what they might be able to say is potentially setting that student up, but it also is sort of going to be more difficult for you to potentially get that final transaction set. So just the types of questions we ask are really important. I just want to use that as an example of counseling-based approach as we kind of come to the close of this first part of the session, is just think about this in terms of what gives the student the most freedom to kind of put themselves out there. I think that's really important. And then agreeing on this with the school that you're working with, setting this culture of interaction with the school, I think in the end will be very powerful. I don't think we have time to really do this in case study discussion. And so just a few questions to ask yourselves as we come out of this, I think really important, based on this idea of a counseling-based approach. I think it's different how we work with parents, how you work with schools and counselors, how you work with students, colleagues, and so also professional opportunities. You know, I think that university reps who work through this type of approach, and we know that this is a great choice somewhere down the career sense, is we see a lot of folks jumping to the other side of the desk. I think bringing this type of approach through and working with your counseling colleagues in schools, there's some great professional learning you can do around this through something like Lehigh University, who has this great online certificate for counseling-based approaches. That can actually set up some great professional opportunities for those of you who are be thinking about moving from the higher ed to the high school side. So that's our stage setter.
Thank you, Lucian. I love the last slide where you get everybody to reflect. I'm going to add another dimension. We as universities are going into schools and we have a certain, we have a certain mandate. We have different majors and programs that we offer. And for the most part, we go in there introducing our institution, sharing insights about the geographical location, talking about some of our faculty. But there is an approach that we found that works incredibly well with counseling, which is connecting the dots by linking your education with the real world and with what they're doing right now. One of our research showed that 93% of students in school are bored. And a lot of them are bored because they don't have context. Counseling is about context as much as anything else. And one of the best ways to provide context is to actually allow them to see how some of the majors that you have or degrees that you have could lead them to a world of work that they aspire to be in. They have an interest in going into automobile or healthcare or whatever else. If the starting point, like Lucian said, could be, and this whole thing about imagine, because if you see a 5-year-old, he'd say, who do you want to become? I want to become mama. I want to become daddy. When you're 10 years old, I want to become a driver. I want to become a pilot, or I want to be like a, policeman, and all of that. And then a little bit later, but they start to at that age, in the teen years, they start to freeze on what they'd want to become. So if you can let them share with you, a starting point in your process could be that you let them share what industry, what areas broadly they'd want to be, and come prepared as university delegates with whatever you're offering. Then I don't want you to, this is a slide that is put here really for you to think about how you could do this, but who will use what I'm studying? Where will it be used and how will it be used? 3 questions that students are consistently looking for answers for, but they go unanswered often in school. Who is going to use what I'm studying? Where will it be used and how will it be used? And therefore that who could be me. The one who uses it could be me. And I want to imagine, what am I going to be doing? This student who gets into medical college, into clinical medicine after 5 years of struggle, gets to a dead body which is dissected and they vomit and they faint because they didn't really, they couldn't really visualize what it would mean to be a medical doctor. But this student may have had interest in serving and healthcare, and there were so many other areas. So when you have a certain offering as a university, what you can do is come back and say, okay, these are the degrees that we offer. These are the sort of skills that you need to actually pursue, or, these are the skills that you develop through this degree. And whether it is automobile or healthcare, again, in the interest of time, I had not dwelled too much on each of these areas, but you could actually be a occupational health and safety specialist. We have degrees. So show me what it will lead to. When you start to show me what it leads to, then I have a better sense of, is there where I want to be? And that requires me to also say, okay, to get there, I need all of these skills. I mean, this is what you're going to need. These are the sort of skills that you will develop through this kind of an academic pursuit. And business, very, very common, but there are so many different areas that, a business degree could lead to, and some real stories. And what are some of the skills, that they develop through your majors? What have some of your people actually done? And how does that link with what they are currently doing? So when a student studies, and I'm going to finish my slides here real quick, so I'm just seeing where we are. When a student studies psychology, as an example, they think that they may never be able to work in the automobile sector. You have a major in psychology, but you don't have a story to tell about where some of your students have deployed their education in psychology. And the fact that a liberal arts major could also end up working for a Google, and it doesn't have to be an IT engineer, kind of gives them some clarity on what they could do next. So I think when we take, as university outreach professionals, when we take this approach of helping them discover what their subjects could lead to at our institutions and beyond, I think we are really helping. We're pursuing a counseling-based approach. And I think a lot of my experience, personal experience, has been that, and again, this is geography now. A lot of people don't know how geography is relevant to the automobile sector or to the health sector. I mean, you could be doing, public health and epidemiology and all of that, spatial analysis, help track disease, etc. Geography was huge in COVID. It was about tracking. There was so much application. So we really have everything connected with everything. And they need to be able to connect those dots. And that's what I'd encourage. My last slide here before Rob comes in, and I'm conscious of the time here, is that university is a means to a career for a lot of young people. Even if it's a career at a university, I mean, I wanted to be a teacher when I was a kid. I could have been a professor at a university. I want to do my PhD in electrical engineering and maybe then end up teaching it. But I didn't end up doing. I just did a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, and then just stopped at the bachelor's degree and started teaching. But generally, it's helpful for them to know what are the skills that a particular industry needs. They have an aspiration, they're imagining themselves there. What are the skills that they need? When you are advising them as a university professional, you are telling them this is what the skills are going to be. This is how you can, or this is your school life. So you can, these are the subjects, this is how you can actually develop these skills. And every academic subject could be a skill. And this is how in university life you will continue to develop them. So a lot of times they ask you, what subject should I choose to come to your university? Can I do business without studying math if I drop math altogether? Now you got to be honest and say, hey, here's what happens, right? When you are a corporate guy, you're going to need to know some math, right? I mean, and you're going to need it here. So linking, the what's happening in school with what they will need in the real world is going to be helpful. I'm going to pass over to Rob for an example with how they do it.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm Rob Reddy. I am Vice President of Enrollment at St. Louis University. If nothing, I am only a practitioner. I am not an academic. I live the life. I've been doing this for 30 years. And that's given me a bit of time to have some experience and perspective, successes, and even more importantly, failures. But it's also recently, because I have a very, very young staff, given me a chance to think about what have I done in the first 30 years and what will I do in the last 10 as I talk to this next generation about what they're going to need to do. And in that reflection, one of the things I've really come to hold is that our industry hasn't changed in 30 years, right? We are doing the same thing I did as a first-time financial aid admission counselor, going out and selling. We are going into high schools and telling students all about our wonderful university, and unfortunately more often about the rock climbing wall and the great catering and the vegan food and the dorms. And we stand at high school fairs and we do what some did in this room or said, we ask a student, what do you want to be? What do you want to study? And then we talk for 15 minutes. The student just stands there and listens, and it's very Socratic. And there's no interaction. There's no growth for that student. And quite honestly, do we know that that student who says they want to be X has any concept of what it means to be X, other than, as somebody said earlier, as a little kid, they saw a police officer and wanted to be a police officer. And so while we're more sophisticated, we're more glitzy, we're more driven, we haven't changed in 30 years. And so what I'm gonna propose here and what I'm gonna talk about, if I hit the right button, is that we don't think about selling. Remember, this generation is sold to every day of their life since they were little. This generation knows about our universities. They just Google us. They Google better than we Google as middle schoolers. They've done more research. They've done more learning. They're also more sophisticated. They know they're being sold to. They don't want to be sold to. So 10 years, 15 years ago, we talked about the authentic student voice, right? That was gonna cure the issue of me as the old man selling some wonderful young high school student on my university, because we were going to have a young person sell my university to another young person. Value, but it's still sales. How do we go about as recruitment officers and flip the paradigm? We are under tremendous stress to deliver headcount, deliver net revenue, deliver higher quality, to have enough athletes, to all these things. And I think we have to be bold and strong enough to say, because we all want to say it, we're educators, right? Well, we're not behaving that way. We're behaving as salespeople. And so what might that look like? We're going to provide students with a new way to think about, what do I want to be within the context of what do I have to be able to do? What experiences should I have to actually pursue that career, to actually become that thing? I mean, let's pause for 1 second. Our students change majors at enormously high rates. Our students change institutions at enormously high rates, and our students drop out at enormously high rates. It's pretty simple. They weren't prepared when they came in to understand what they were getting into. I don't mean getting into St. Louis University. I mean getting into the idea that I'm going to be a physicist or an electrician or a philosopher or whatever, because we didn't step back and provide them the avenue to learn about what might it really be to be a physicist, to be a chemist, to be a philosopher. And so let's change our paradigm from a Socratic method of telling you all about our wonderful universities as a recruitment strategy towards saying, we're going to give you these opportunities to explore and learn and succeed, and I hope fail. I said that earlier about myself. Failure can be the greatest learning experience anybody ever has. How are we going to provide that? And as a natural offshoot, build affinity, build our recruitment, maybe be bold enough to say not everybody should come to my institution. We can't really serve what they want to be, and it's okay letting students know that. We are authentically genuine, and I guarantee that's a recruitment strategy, because that student and that parent will tell others, this university helped us understand that wasn't the right place. And they have contextual values. They have intrinsic opportunities. And we may not attend there, but maybe your child ought to. So how is SLU thinking about doing this? This is a massive paradigm shift. So we've invested in something called SLU, SLU EXP. Taken recruitment dollars that could have gone to another beautiful brochure, an updated website, more travel, and we've said, we're going to invest in something that gives back to students. It's an opportunity for students to engage with our institution in a variety of ways. We have these early internships, we have workshops, power skills competitions, you can see those things, so that they can experience. I might want to do something in data science. So we have an early internship. This is all virtual. It's scalable. We can do this anywhere in the world, where they can do a data analytics project. We're exposing them to people from all around the world because it's virtual. We're providing them contextual experiences, and they do a data management for maybe 6-week early internship. And coming out of that, a lot of students will say, wow, that was fabulous. I want to learn more. And then as a recruitment, we can get them, oh, by the way, SLU has a very strong data analytics department. We'd like to expose this to you, blah, blah, blah. So recruitment in parallel, that's important. And some students don't even make it to the end of the early internship, because they say, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this in any way, shape, or form. And then they do another. They might do our geospatial early internship. They might do something in the creative arts in a competition and explore and figure out who they are. Where will they want to be? Where will they want to go? So, just a few things. This is no cost. It's virtual. It engages people all around the world, as I said. We do tie micro scholarships to it. We think that's kind of important. And I think that also changes the scholarship strategy that we've employed forever. The strategy is we reward you for everything you did in the past and hope you do well in the future. We're now saying invest in your future and you will earn scholarship for that. So another sort of sidebar in the recruitment effort, we want students that are engaged in looking to do what we offer. So what happens? How has this helped us? This was a big, big gamble. We're going to give students the opportunity to engage and learn and grow and fail and succeed, and in the process build affinity brand to St. Louis University. 50,000 signups in less than 2 years. That's pretty good. If you could get 50,000 leads from any investment, every enrollment manager in here would somehow find that money. This has been great. We then take the signups and generate leads off of that. We work those leads in a very structured and concerted way. You did awesome in your, art competition. Did you know SLU has one of the strongest religiously affiliated museums, blah, 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 and into our recruiting spiel. And we've done this globally. And we all know as recruiters how expensive global recruitment is. And while this is all fabulous and wonderful and it's getting us to where we want to be, I think it goes back to flipping that paradigm, to saying we're going to be not Socratic deliverers of information that students already have, that they don't really believe because they want an experience. That's how these students today build loyalty to whether it's a car, whether it's a dress, whether it's a university, because they've had experiences. But it also hits at the mission, I think, of all of our institutions, to be educators, to lead students down a path to what they might be. And we do this in a safe and secure environment. They can fail, they can succeed, they can have an experience that maybe leads them to think, I don't want to be that, or I do want to be that even more. And it's done in a way that they also build other skill sets. Students tell us over and over again in our student surveys, I need to build real-world practical skills. So why can't we start to deliver those in our recruitment process? So now we've moved from a very passive recruitment process for the student. I passively sit here, I learn, I listen. Maybe I like your climbing wall, maybe I like the city that you're in, maybe I met a faculty person and they lit my fire. Maybe. To an active recruitment process that says, we are going to give to you. We are going to help you succeed. Isn't that the end goal of higher education? Help you succeed? And in that process, you're going to determine whether we're the right place for you. And again, it's a huge paradigm shift to explain this to your provost, your president, your chancellor, because it's risky. It's not like sending out 100,000 inquiry cards and knowing you got a 2.5% response rate and it cost you $800 a lead. This says we're going to live our mission, we're going to counsel students, we're going to move them forward, and in that inherently positive process, students and families are going to see the intrinsic value of our institution, they're going to build loyalty, and they're going to ultimately enroll. And we think, though we're very early in this, we think they will enroll and be more successful. So I get the 5-minute card. I'm gonna finish up because I hope we have some conversation and discussion. But thank you all. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Rob. I mean, that is fabulous. We kept talking about this. This is your slide, but we'll get to the Q&A. But we always talk about, and we'll take a couple of questions, but outreach is really about student empowerment, school empowerment, engagement. It is not a sales function. It is not a recruitment function. It is actually yes, recruitment happens as a byproduct of engagement, and engagement happens as a byproduct of empowerment, I would say. Empowerment is the holy grail of outreach. And here, an early stage internship is actually empowering the student to understand the depth of what data science is, and not just just a 2-day experience at a doctor's clinic may help a kid figure out, or even a virtual experience that, oh, this blood stuff I don't want to deal with, but I'm intrigued by something else. So very, very, and you can see the 30 years that Rob has and the 45 schools that Lucien runs counseling at. But quick question before we end. I know our student volunteers. Yeah, we'll take. Yeah, go ahead, please. You raised your hand first.
Good morning, sir. So my question is how to guide students who are not clear what they have to do in their life. Most of the students, they are confused these days. So how to guide them?
How do you guide students who have turned up in 5th grade or 7th grade and haven't done the math that you're going to teach them? What do you tell them to do? You teach them that math. You basically give them a book and they read and they explore, and it's the same story. The reason, and confusion is good for young people. I was confused at 35, I'm still confused at 50. I mean, confusion is not a bad thing. Not doing your own research, not investigating enough, not experiencing things before you make choices is the problem. Confusion is not the problem. And university colleagues have a role to help in this also. Because when you help bring clarity, from confusion to clarity is outreach and student recruitment for me. That you actually do that, because what we just heard a counselor from a school say, how do you help students who are confused? That means all the students that you're trying to reach out as a university are experiencing that ambivalence, that things are changing so quickly, and it's very natural. So research and exploration and experiencing different areas through university colleagues, through the community, through the parent body. The parent body is a huge resource in a counseling infrastructure for the counseling ecosystem of a school. We'll take one more question. I can see the sign is coming up. Yes, Ashish. We'll take one from the university side and one from the school side, so that helps.
Hi, Rob. Ashish this side from RV University, Bangalore. Excellent initiative that you said virtual is scalable. So 50,000 signups is really a great number. Now, how do you promote this? Is it just organic or any other platforms? If you are promoting this, what are the alternate platforms, and what's the bifurcation of this 50,000 number?
Sure. I'm going to turn this over to my colleague. So, Ananya runs a lot of just what you said, outreach, how we run this project. She is the absolute expert. So I'm going to let Ananya, I know I'm embarrassing her, but answer that question.
Right. So we actually have a very interesting approach. This year onwards, we started building partnerships with high schools to get this program with them. So we connect with the principals and leadership to showcase the value to them. And then through their channels, get it to the students. Apart from that, we actually have a lot of digital marketing that runs on the programs itself, not in selling SLU. So we'll be talking about here's the internship you can join. Here are what your application requirements are, and then get started. We do have a platform on which all of this runs. It's called Accelerate, and that's just the technology backbone, but we do outreach to multiple means online as well as through school partnerships.
Okay, so just follow up that any rough bifurcation, what's the organic versus the promotion?
I would say most of it is organic. In fact, you would say one student would do an internship and then tell their friend because they earn scholarship and now they can apply it to their higher education. So it would be about 60%, which is organic, and the remaining we do paid marketing on the opportunities as well.
Thank you.
I think Ananya's point is, obviously to get this up and running, we did, as she said, digital marketing, search type efforts. And that got students into the ecosystem, and then the word of mouth grew significantly. I think our newest, as Ananya mentioned, endeavor is to say that's great. We had a launch in some way, but how do we bring this, and I didn't even get into this, how do we bring this to the guidance in the high school community to say, SLU needs to do a service to you all also. And we would like to partner with you in that counseling sense to bring this to your students. So we've just in the last 9 months launched Beyond Boundaries, which is a relational marketing effort, in a sense, between our organization and the high school specifically. We also provide some wraparound counseling services to our high school administrators in terms of how do they do their job, how do they help tell students about going to college, going to university, and we are seeing massive positive response. And so I would say that's a subset of organic marketing. That's maybe a touch more direct, but that's the next phase of this project.
I would love to catch up with both of you more.
Come to our booth. We would love to talk to you.
We've completely run out of time, but we'll take these questions. Christine, yourself, please. It was already answered. So whoever had questions, because we need to let this room get ready for the next speakers to come and start setting up. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. Thank you.